This podcast is brought to you by Most Valuable Podcasts, leading the league in podcasting entertainment.
What's up, everybody? Ricky Widmer here, along with the one, not the only. It's not Brandon Swanson, it's Sean Anderson.
Hey.
I feel like, you know what I was thinking about doing?
What's that?
So you know how on the YouTube channel, how we have the About section, and it says, like, the podcast that you're under? I think recently, with how much you've been on this podcast, I think we can put the Primetime Podcast next to you.
Just put floater.
Like,
fast break, comma floater.
You're on all of them, and you've been filling in for the Primetime Podcast. This is like, what, the third time in 2 months?
Yeah,
because you were on
that.
back-to-back duty back in the last month. But we got a jam-packed show for you guys. Actually, got Matt calling in, a little Patron segment to lead it off, and then we're going to roll right through with our football previews. We got the rest of the SEC East to preview today. Actually, recording this in advance. So while you guys are seeing this go live, I'm not here. Dave and I are in California. We're at VidCon. We're actually not going to be here in Chicago, so we're pre-recording this one. Before we get into it, before I welcome Matt in, little housekeeping here at the beginning. If you want to be like Matt and be on a podcast, make sure to check out patreon.com/mostvaluablepodcast. That's where you can support MVP each and every month. Also, go to our store, link down below in the description, where you can get our t-shirt, nice MVP t-shirt. That can be found in the link down below or at mostvaluablepodcast.com, where you can also catch MVP each and every day. And then last but not least, go on to Apple Podcasts, go on to iTunes, give the Primetime Podcast and all the podcasts MVP a 5-star rating, and then type in a little something about why people should listen to it, what do you like about it, and it would really help us out in the long run. But we're going to welcome in a patron from, I don't even remember how many months it's been. It's been forever, it seems like. Matt calling in today. Matt, how you doing today?
Not too bad. Got through Monday. How about you guys?
One of those days.
I got through Monday, applied to a couple jobs, and woke up at 12, so it was pretty great.
I envy that waking up at 12. I wish I could do that every single day, Sean. So live it up while you can. But Matt calling in today, we're talking a little college basketball. So Matt, when he sent in the message for us, he's like, you know what? I don't really know what to title it, but basically what we're going to talk about is there were a ton of players that said, hey, I'm going to the draft, and there were some that went to the draft. There's obviously some that came back. So we're going to take a look at the NFL draft returnees, I'm calling them, and we're going to talk about which college basketball teams benefited the most from the players that pulled out and didn't actually go into the NBA draft. We're just going to kind of do it round table style. We'll start with Matt, our honored guest. So Matt, I'll let you go first. Who's one guy, one team you want to start the show off with, talking about who benefited most from the NFL draft returnees?
NBA draft.
Did I say NFL?
Right. I just want to make sure we're talking the same thing.
It is NBA. I probably do that each and every show. We're talking NBA.
Way to go, Ricky.
Who is for college basketball, who's a team, who's a guy that you're excited is coming back from the NBA draft, not the NFL draft? It's all just a jumble up here in my head.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, shocker. I guess I'll start off with my team, Purdue. So, the guy, there was really heading in, there wasn't much concern with Carson Edwards, sophomore, that made his name known last year and was awarded the best shooting guard in the nation and was second-team All-American. But he did get invited to the Combine. He was a late invite, and he had a pretty good performance from what I heard, such that, people thought he might sneak in and get taken. So his return is huge for Purdue, having, 4 other senior starters that are gone. If he would have gone, they would have lost all 5 starters. But instead, they're going to return what should be the Big Ten preseason player of the year and probably a first-team preseason All-American type guy.
Yeah, and I know for me, a lot of the guys, and this is kind of taking the Purdue one and kind of blending it in, a lot of these guys are, hey, they were like, for Edwards, looking at the stats, he led the team in scoring. So it's like anytime you can return your leading scorer from last year, you're probably going to do good things the next year with him back on the team.
Well, I think the one thing that is massive that Matt did mention is the fact that he's the only starter coming back, and that's huge for this Purdue team because Purdue had one of their best years in such a long time. They finally were able to get over that hump. It seems like Purdue, Matt Painter always has some decent seasons in the regular season, and then they hit the NCAA tournament and aren't really able to get over that hump. They hit that hump this year, and Carson Edwards is just having that stability in the starting lineup and having a scorer, like you mentioned, the leading scorer, is going to be so dangerous for this Purdue team, especially if they want to get back to where they reached this year in the NCAA tournament and possibly even reach a Final Four. It's going to be massive for them having Carson Edwards back.
No, and I'm going to throw it over to you, Sean, because with Purdue, we'll kind of bring in one of yours because Purdue's not the only team. I'm setting you up for this one. Purdue's not the only team that's going to have a big guy coming back. That Edwards sounds like a first name, last name. The guy you're going to mention, he might have two first names as well.
I thought you were just going with the Big Ten connection that these two have. But my guy's Charles Matthews from Michigan, 6'6", from Chicago, Illinois, out of St. Rita High School. Charles Matthews, last year, 13 points. He was a transfer from Kentucky. He was in the Calipari recruitment class back in 2015. Played for Beeline. Beeline said that Charles Matthews knew of his intentions when he was going for the Detroit Pistons job. Matthews is coming back. Beeline coming back. You see what he did in that Michigan team in his sophomore year, technically. You look at what he did, 30 minutes per game, 49% from the field, shot 31% from three. Not that great of a free throw shooter, but I think he's going to develop a little bit more, especially when he has more focus on him in the offense with Mo Wagner leaving. I think it's going to be big for Charles Matthews. He showed a lot as a slashing guard. I think that's going to be big. If he's able to develop that shot a little bit more, get that free throw percentage up to around 65%, it's going to make him more of a dangerous offensive player because he likes to drive to the rim. He's going to get hacked. If he's able to be more efficient there, he's going to be, obviously a leading scorer and a guy that the Michigan Wolverines will go to on offense. But also, if he's able to hit that outside shot just a little bit more, hit about 0.8 per game on 2.6 attempts per game, if he's able to get that up to around 34%, not only will make himself look at like a brighter NBA prospect, but he's also going to help himself and the Wolverines get back to glory and possibly a national championship.
Well, and the reason why I set you up for it is because I'm going to take that and I'm going to go back to Matthew because I'm glad that Matthew started out with his Purdue connection because this is probably, especially with me, I know especially with Matt, this is the conference where it's like, this is the bread and butter. Like, I love the Big Ten. Obviously, Matt loves it as well, his Purdue Boilermakers in the Big Ten. And the thing I look at is both with Purdue and Michigan getting both Edwards and Matthews coming back is, Edwards led the team in scoring for Purdue and Charles Matthews did not. But you look at Michigan, if they would have lost Matthews, even if Purdue would have lost Edwards, that's the top 3 point getters from last year on both teams. Bye-bye, we're going pro. Then you look at two other teams, one that was the number 1 team going into the postseason, the other one I believe was number 3 in the Big Ten. You got teams like Michigan State, Miles Bridges, and I know Jaren Jackson wasn't a top point getter. He was 5th on the team. But you lose Miles Bridges. That's a big name to lose if you're Michigan State. You got Ohio State also losing guys like Keita Bates-Diop. So for me, this either whether it's Purdue, Matt, or whether it's Michigan, either one of these two teams can still, with these guys returning, still kind of compete, and maybe one of them, do you think one, either Purdue or Michigan, maybe wins the Big Ten next year because of one of these guys returning?
I think it's going to be pretty wide open, to be honest. I think you're looking at, I saw an article that kind of looked over this, who came back, and especially as it relates to the Big Ten, which had such a down year last year with only 4 teams making the tournament. They got a lot of good pieces back that should kind of, help them to be a little better as a conference next year. But that said, I don't think there's going to be one runaway team like maybe Michigan State was pegged last year. I think that it's going to be pretty competitive. Purdue, Michigan, they're showing up in top 25 rankings. Even Wisconsin, I think they kind of hit their stride at the end of last year. And with getting Ethan Happ back, that's obviously huge for them. So them, Michigan State, they're going to have talent. So I don't know. I think it could, but I think it's only because the conference itself is going to be so wide open.
Yeah, and I mean, right now I'm looking at the recruiting rankings from 247sports.com for last year in the conference, and it's like Michigan State right there at 3-4. It's like, yeah, you've got Purdue at 9 and Wisconsin at 13, but the big thing about both of those schools is just because you're not getting a 5-star recruiter like for Wisconsin, you're not getting a 4-star recruit, doesn't mean you're not bringing in guys and what they're able to work with each and every year. They're not pulling in the Duke level guys and still competing within their own conference. I'm actually going to go out of the Big Ten for my first guys, and I'm saying guys because there's 2 of them. And these guys were huge when it came to the NCAA tournament, although they got beat by the Cinderella story, which was our hometown Loyola Ramblers. And that is I think they're brothers, the Martin brothers from Nevada, Caleb and Cody. And it's like these guys ran that team, especially in the NCAA tournament. They're guys where it's like Caleb was the guy who led the team in scoring. You've got Cody was the guy who led the team in the assists. And it's like getting these 2 back. All right, these are the 2 that are going to be now leaders on our team yet again this year. This is something that I look at, and I know Nevada, a smaller school from the Mountain West, this is something where Nevada fans can look at it and go, hey, maybe we can win the Mountain West again and get another tournament bid next year.
Well, I think, of course, they can win the Mountain West again, but I think the biggest thing is now they have this, at least this exposure. And Eric Musselman, a former NBA coach, was with the Golden State Warriors, was with the Sacramento Kings, really having a resurgence now with Nevada. Now there's going to be more eyes on them. So that's going to be the biggest thing for Cody and Caleb and this Nevada program is how are you going to deal with eyes on your program? Because you look at what Musselman's been able to do at his years in Nevada, 24-14, 28-7, 29-8. They're progressively getting better. These 2 were transfers from North Carolina State, and they have 1 final year at Nevada. They're going to have a ton of pressure on them to produce, to take Nevada as far as they possibly can. Nevada clearly not a basketball powerhouse in no really sense. But I think the biggest thing for them is just how will they deal with this pressure. And if they do win in the Mountain West, that means they're going to get a higher seed. They're not going to be a 7th seed going up against a Texas team with really only Mo Bamba on the outside and also Roach on the outside. And they're not going to have to deal with a Loyola Chicago. They're not going to have to deal with the weaker tournament hand they kind of got. Yes, they had to beat a Cincinnati team, but also that Cincinnati team didn't really have a go-to scorer. They had a great head coach and a defensive mindset, but they were able to run back in the second half of most of these games and get victories. If teams are expecting this from Caleb and Cody Martin, especially after a year, I think this is, obviously it's going to help them in the regular season, but once it comes to the tournament, this might end up just hurting the Nevada program that they're coming back because I think Musselman's a great, fantastic coach, but having Caleb and Cody back, the eyes are still going to be on them. The pressure's going to be on them. The expectations are going to be larger for Nevada, and this might end up being a team that, comes in as a 5 seed, faces one of these terrible 12 seeds, and gets upset and bounces the first round.
I mean, anything can, the thing that we've kind of seen is anything can happen in the tournament, but also the thing I look at is, look at the Loyola story of, I would say they're smaller than a Nevada team, but when you get these smaller schools with that veteran presence and with these 2 being in the tournament before, it'll be a toss-up to see, will the pressure kind of cave them, or will it be, hey, we've been here before, we kind of know what to do. Matt, I'm going to come back to you. Who's another guy on your list that you're excited is returning and will benefit his team next year?
So to try to keep some connection, let's go with another guy from a team that lost to Loyola in the NCAA tournament, and that's Tennessee and Admiral Schofield. So he, this guy's just a monster in terms of being an athletic freak and just built like no other. So his return, I think, is huge, especially for a Tennessee team that surprised a lot of people last year in the SEC. And it's not just him. Grant Williams, I don't think he necessarily declared, but he is another big piece that's back. And, you talk about a team making that step as they did last year and now having another year to play one another and kind of try to take the next step up. And I think that his return is going to be huge for them.
Well, and before I because I want to get what you're thinking with this, Sean, I just wanted to throw in this. I'm just going to throw a little bit more on that fire because it's funny that Matt's thinking about Tennessee. I'm thinking about the other surprise from the SEC in Auburn. They're kind of with my Nevada connection, with the SEC connection, they're getting 2 guys in Heron and Harper coming back where it's great. we're getting our top 2 guys back from next year to where I am expecting Schofield back for the Vols, Harper and Heron back for the Tigers. No reason why these 2 teams shouldn't be maybe top 2, both top 3 again next year in the SEC.
Yeah, and I think one thing, too, is I'll keep the SEC party going because I have 2 brothers from the SEC, Quindary Weatherspoon and Nick Weatherspoon of the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The thing that I look at this with the Mississippi State Bulldogs is you're getting 2 guys that one was SEC all-freshman year, Nick Weatherspoon, and then Quindary was second team SEC. And you look at Ben Howland, his first 3 years at Mississippi State, 14-17, 16-16, finally gets over that 500 mark, hits 25-12, but isn't able to get to the NCAA tournament. Ben Howland obviously had great success at UCLA, 2 Final Fours, even had 2 Sweet 16s with the Pittsburgh Panthers when he was a coach. Hasn't gotten to the tourney yet. Mississippi State hasn't gone to the tourney since 2009. It's massive that these 2 are coming back because you look at what Quindary did. He's a junior. I think he's going to be a senior because, he's going to be a senior. But last year, 14 points per game, 31% from the 3, and then 48% from the field. And you look at what Nick was able to do, 6'2" guard, 47% from the field, 29% from 3, 72 from the line, but 10.8 points per game. You're having 2 guys that know each other, 2 guys that can score, and you're keeping these 2 starters around for your team. I think that's massive for Ben Howland's program and massive for the Bulldogs and their fans because if you want to get back to the NCAA tournament, if Nick went, that would have been a killer, and if Quindary went, that would have been even more of a massive blow because he is your best player on this team.
I actually want to shoot a question at you, Matt, where we both brought up 3 SEC teams, but I was waiting for when the SEC came up because there's one guy I was waiting for. I was waiting for one of us to bring up his name, and I know Brandon and I, when he made his decision, were like, we've got to talk about it, and that's Jonte Porter. This is a team not like a Tennessee or an Auburn. They weren't a team that led the conference last year. More of a team like Sean, like you brought up, with a Mississippi State where they were right there. They were only a game better than Mississippi State. The thing I want to ask you, Matt, with Jonte Porter coming back, how much is that going to benefit the Tigers, if any? Does him kind of coming back move the needle and give them any more wins next year?
I think it might. I guess I struggle with Missouri's coach, Conso Martin, is a former Purdue guy. So I've kind of there were times when Purdue was looking, do we ditch Painter and go after Martin? Because Martin, he's kind of established this wherever he's been. He's a great recruiter, but for whatever reason, I don't know. He just seems to be stuck in this state of, I don't want to call it mediocrity, but for the talent he typically has on his teams, he just can't seem to get over the edge. So that's not to say that Porter's return won't get him there, but I think Missouri in general, just they need to take advantage of the conference they're in. I guess the SEC typically isn't a power conference, and it was admittedly a lot better last year. But yeah, I'm kind of deviating from the question a little bit, but Porter's return, it's big. It's definitely, it outweighs not having him, and you kind of knew you were going to lose his brother, but I think they if there's going to be a year where they take a step up, it needs to be now before the SEC, some of the top tier teams establish themselves, and then they get kind of lost in the mix.
I completely agree with you, Matt, that the time is now for Mizzou. And I think the biggest thing about Jonte coming back is they lost their 2 top scorers in Cassius Robertson and Jordan Barnett. Those 2 were seniors. Now they've graduated. And you look at Michael Porter Jr., when he was on there, he was technically the 3rd leading scorer because he averaged 10 per game in the 3 games he did play. So you're losing, again, your top 3 scorers. The 4th scorer, Jonte Porter. So Jonte needs to come in as a leader on this team, and they still have guys that are still, we're getting minutes. Kevin Purrier, he's going to be a senior. He averaged 25 minutes per game. Jeremiah Timlin, as a freshman, averaged 19.4 a game. Even Jordan Geist, 26.1 minutes per game. He's coming back. So you're still having some players on there, but having Jonte Porter, a guy who we mocked him, at least in the lotto in the NBA, probably would have fell to around the 20s if we're being honest. But he's a guy that is very dynamic. He was able to shoot from the outside as a 6'10" forward. He's not as athletic as his brother, but he is more physical down low. So I think having him, and in the SEC, having a physical guy, we saw this with Yancey in Georgia. Yancey Maton, if we have a guy like that who is able to go all the way out down the three-point line and also be physical inside, that's going to be a key difference. I think he was SEC Player of the Year, Yancey Maton was. I don't know if Jonte can do that, but if he's able to put up 15 points, grab about 7 boards per game, and even dish out 2 assists per game to the shooters on the outside like Geist, I think it could be something that could really help this Missouri team. And like Matt said, get Konzo over the hump.
Well, and I mean, the thing I didn't even think about until after I had asked Matt the question about Jonte is just the SEC in general has a lot of guys returning. Matt brings up Schofield from Tennessee. I brought up the 2 coming back for Auburn. You brought up if I'm not mistaken, 2 players from Mississippi State. Was it just 1 or was it 2?
2 brothers.
2 brothers from Mississippi State. We bring up Jonte Porter. One guy we haven't even mentioned this is a guy that was coming back, I believe, before the Combine in Daniel Gafford, because Brandon and I had him in our big board. Then he decides, I'm coming back, and the comment section loved to tell us that he's coming back, and it's like, we get it. We did the big board before he made that decision. But that, to me, just all those names, the SEC is going to be very interesting next year to watch. And I mean, even teams like, I know these aren't ones getting guys back, but like a Georgia team that's now going to have Tom Crean at the helm. What does Alabama do now without Colin Sexton? Like, these are teams like the SEC might be one that's really interesting to watch. 2018, 2019.
Well, it is massive, too, that Gafford's coming back for Arkansas, too, because they lost Darius Hall, they lost C.J. Jones, and Jalen Barford and Daryl Macon both have all left. Hall and Jones transferred, and Barford and Macon have now graduated. So having Gafford back is massive for the Razorbacks.
Well, and just kind of to wrap this one out, we'll go, I have none left. We'll go to Matt. We'll see if he has one left. And then, Sean, if you have one left, your final guys that you want to mention in this segment. Matt, you're up first. Hit it.
So I don't necessarily like this team or root for this team, but I think
it's okay. I root against Mizzou every time because it's the border war between Illinois and Mizzou.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. But I'll go with North Carolina and Luke May, his return. So you're talking about, I think he was voted 3rd team All-American maybe last year. So behind Carson Edwards, weirdly enough, I think he's the next best in terms of All-American status last year. So I would put him as probably a preseason All-American favorite, if not first team, then second team. But talk about a huge stride from his 2016-17 season, 5.5 points per game and 4 rebounds, to last year 17 points per game and 10 rebounds. So with him, and I guess kind of a formula for North Carolina has been they get a lot of the 5-star recruits. Some of them, leave early, but they always seem to have some, high contributing guy that's an upperclassman, and I think Luke May is going to fit that bill.
Like Joel Berry last year.
Or Theo Pinson as well. So, I mean, they lost 2 guys like Theo Pinson and Joel Berry, like Matt just mentioned, 2 upperclassmen that contribute, and now you're losing those 2 guys. You need some leadership on that Roy Williams team, and like Matt mentioned, Luke May is a perfect guy, and that jump, a guy that can, is that big, can shoot 42% from 3. It's absolutely deadly. So if he needs to take a couple more jumps. I don't think he's consistent enough, but if he's consistent enough, he's a deadly player.
He was always that guy, like when all the news was coming out about who's declaring for the draft, when his was like, I'm declaring without an agent, like, first when I saw he's declaring, I looked like, no disrespect, but I'm like, really? Like, really? You're declaring for, like, do you think you're going to get drafted? Because I don't think you'd get drafted. And then he was always a guy I pegged of, like, we'll see. Oh, he didn't sign with an agent. He's coming back. He just wants to go through the process and come back.
I think he's smaller, less athletic Kevin Love. But even in college, when you're a fourth-year senior with his abilities, he's still a good basketball player. I still think he's going to be a guy to watch out for. And the final guy I want to throw out there, final 2 guys, sticking with the ACC, it's Syracuse, O'Shea Brissett, and Tyus Battle. We looked at what this team did as an 11 seed. Them 2 coming back, it's going to be massive. Tyus Battle was their leading scorer last year, 19.2 points per game. O'Shea Brissett, a bigger forward down low. He's a guy that averaged 14.9 as a freshman. Massive that those 2 are coming back. Jim Boeheim have to be at least moving up in the ACC. I know they were a little bit lower, a little bit of a kind of a slight, like, why were they in the NCAA tournament last year? But with these two guys coming back, having another year, having the experience in the tournament, this is a team that maybe Sweet 16, Elite 8 should be on the docket and expectations for the Syracuse Orange.
They are always a team that is, like, for Syracuse, like, it just seems like they're always a team that is on the bubble, and then either people are mad that they didn't get in, or people are mad that they did get in. And this year, it'll be interesting to see how the ACC kind of ends up, because let's be honest, we're all assuming Duke is healthy and they're going to run away with it.
And I don't think they're on the bubble this year. I think they might be closer to that 6 to 10 range for the Syracuse Orange.
Well, this is where you guys come in. Let us know what you guys think down below. I want to thank Matt for joining us for another great Patreon segment. If you want to be like Matt, go check out our Patreon link down below in the comment or in the description. Then let us know what you guys think down below in that comment section.